The scream that tore from 9-year-old Amara's throat at 3:17 a.m. was loud enough to wake the dead, but not loud enough to wake her father from the sleep that would soon claim him forever. If you are just tuning in, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share with your friends and family and tell us where you are watching from. Amara sat up in her bed, gasping like a fish thrown onto dry sand. Her silk pajamas stuck to her sweaty skin, and her heart hammered against her ribs like a woodpecker gone crazy. The fancy air conditioner hummed softly in her huge bedroom, but she felt as hot as if she'd been standing under the blazing Lagos sun. The dream was still there, playing in her mind like a movie she couldn't turn off. She had seen her father, Chief Emeka Okafor, the man everyone called the Oil King, sitting in a dusty village far from their mansion. He wore his best traditional clothes, the kind with gold threads that caught the light. Around him sat old men with wrinkled faces and wise eyes, but one of them had murder in his heart. In the dream, Amara had watched an old man with 3 deep lines carved into each cheek bring her father a gourd filled with palm wine. The white foam bubbled at the top like soapsuds, and her father smiled as he took it. But Amara had seen what nobody else saw. The old man's other hand, quick as a snake, pouring something clear and deadly into the drink. "No, Papa, don't drink it," she had screamed in the dream, but her voice made no sound. She was invisible, helpless, watching her father lift the poisoned cup to his lips with a grateful smile. Now, awake in her real bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and princess dolls, Amara's hands shook as she wiped tears from her cheeks. This wasn't just any dream. This was the kind of dream her grandmother used to have, the kind that showed things before they happened, the kind that adults called nonsense until it was too late. Her father was planning to travel to Umunna village next week for some festival. He'd been talking about it for months, excited to go back to his roots and show the villagers how successful he'd become. But if Amara's dream was true, and deep in her bones she knew it was, then her father would never come home alive. She threw off her covers and ran barefoot across the cold marble floor. Her feet made soft slapping sounds as she hurried down the long hallway lined with expensive paintings and fancy vases. She had to find her father. She had to warn him. She had to make him listen, even though she was just a little girl and he was one of the richest men in all of Nigeria. The study door creaked open like the mouth of a sleeping giant. Inside, Chief Emeka Okafor sat hunched over his massive desk, his fingers dancing across the laptop keyboard like a pianist playing a sad song. The room smelled of expensive leather and old books, but to Amara, it felt as cold as a morgue. "Papa," she whispered, her voice barely louder than a mouse's squeak. Her father didn't look up. His eyes stayed glued to the computer screen. On his desk lay a thick folder labeled Una Village Project in bold red letters. The same village from her nightmare. "Papa, I need to tell you something important," Amara said, taking a brave step forward. Her bare feet felt frozen against the marble floor. "Not now, sweetheart. Papa is working," he mumbled, still typing. Click, click, click went the keyboard, each sound like a nail being hammered into a coffin. Amara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She had to make him listen. She had to save him. "Papa, you can't go to the village. Something terrible will happen to you there." Finally, Chief Okafor looked up. His eyes were red and tired, like he'd been staring at the computer for hours. "What are you talking about, my dear, and why are you awake at this hour?" "I had a dream, Papa. A bad dream about you." The words tumbled out of her mouth like water from a broken pipe. There was an old man with marks on his face, and he gave you palm wine, but he put poison in it first. Papa, he's going to kill you." Chief Okafor's face changed. The tiredness disappeared, replaced by something that looked almost like anger. He leaned back in his leather chair, which squeaked like a frightened animal. "Amara, you're being ridiculous. It was just a nightmare." His voice was sharp now, cutting through the air like a knife. "You've been watching too many of those silly movies." "But Papa, it felt so real. I saw everything. The village, the elders, the man with the scars. He hated you, Papa. I could see it in his eyes." Her father stood up, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. He walked around the desk and knelt in front of her, but his eyes weren't kind anymore. They were cold, like stones at the bottom of a deep well. "Listen to me carefully, Amara. I am Chief Emeka Okafor. I own oil companies worth billions of naira. I have security guards, bodyguards, and connections all over this country. No village elder with tribal marks can hurt me. Do you understand?" Tears began to roll down Amara's cheeks like raindrops on a window. "But Papa..." "No buts." He stood up quickly, towering over her like a giant. "You are 9 years old. You don't understand how the world works. These village superstitions died with your grandmother, and I won't have my daughter believing in such nonsense." The words hit Amara like slaps across her face. "I'm going to Ununa village next week, and that's final," Chief Okafor said, returning to his desk. "I'm going to show those villagers what their son has achieved. I'm going to bring development to their community, and I'm going to do it without fear of imaginary poisoners. Papa, please, go back to bed, Amara, and don't let me hear any more of this foolishness." As Amara turned to leave, her heart breaking into a million pieces, she heard her father mutter under his breath, "Children these days, too much imagination, not enough sense." 5 days. That's how much time Amara had left to save her father's life. She sat at the breakfast table, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate like yellow puzzle pieces. The eggs were cold now, but she couldn't eat. How could anyone eat when their father was marching toward his own death like a blind man walking off a cliff? "Miss Amara, you haven't touched your food," said Mama Kemi, their housekeeper. She was a round, gentle woman who had been taking care of the household since Amara was a baby. Her worried eyes looked like those of a mother hen watching over a sick chick. "Mama Kemi," Amara whispered, looking around to make sure her father wasn't nearby, "can I tell you a secret?" The older woman sat down beside her, her kind face creased with concern. "Of course, my dear. What's troubling you?" Amara's words poured out like water from a burst dam. She told Mama Kemi everything. The dream, the poisoned palm wine, the old man with tribal marks, her father's angry dismissal. As she spoke, she watched the housekeeper's expression change from curiosity to worry to something that looked almost like fear. "Child," Mama Kemi said slowly, "your grandmother had the gift of sight. Everyone in this house knew it. If you have inherited this gift, then you believe me." Amara's heart leapt like a happy rabbit. Mama Kemi was quiet for a long moment, her fingers worrying the edge of her apron. "I believe that some things cannot be explained by the white man's science. But your father, he has forgotten the old ways. He thinks money can protect him from everything. Will you help me convince him?" The housekeeper's face fell like a deflated balloon. "Oh, child, Chief Okafor doesn't listen to the help. To him, I'm just an old village woman who cleans his house and cooks his food." That afternoon, Amara tried a different approach. She called her mother in London, where she was attending some important business conference. The phone rang and rang before her mother's tired voice answered. "Amala? Sweetheart? Is everything all right? You know Mummy is very busy with meetings. Mama, you have to stop Papa from going to the village." The words rushed out so fast they stumbled over each other. "What village? Darling, slow down." Amara explained everything again, but as she spoke, she could hear her mother's attention drifting. There were voices in the background, the shuffle of papers, the clink of coffee cups. "Oh, honey," her mother said with a laugh that sounded hollow. "You have such an active imagination, just like your grandmother used to. But Papa will be fine. He's taking security guards with him. And besides, it's just a cultural festival. Now Mummy has to go. The meeting is starting." The line went dead, leaving Amara holding the phone like a broken lifeline. The morning arrived like an unwelcome visitor, bringing with it the sound that Amara had been dreading for days, the rumble of car engines in their circular driveway. She pressed her face against her bedroom window and watched as 3 black SUVs lined up like sleeping elephants. Her father's security team moved around the vehicles like busy ants, checking doors, loading luggage, and speaking into tiny microphones attached to their shirts. Everything looked so normal, so safe. But Amara knew that all the bodyguards in the world couldn't protect her father from a poisoned cup offered by a trusted elder. "Miss Amara, your father wants to see you before he leaves," Mama Kemi called from the doorway. Her voice was soft and sad, like a lullaby sung at a funeral. Downstairs in the marble foyer, Chief Okafor stood tall and proud in his finest agbada. The traditional robe was deep blue with golden embroidery that caught the morning light like tiny stars. He looked like a king preparing for his coronation, not a man walking toward his grave. "Ah, there's my little princess," he said, opening his arms wide. But when Amara ran to him, she didn't feel the usual warmth of his embrace. Instead, she felt like she was hugging a statue, cold and unmoving. "Papa, please, don't go," she whispered into his chest, breathing in his familiar cologne mixed with the smell of expensive fabric. "I'm begging you." Chief Okafor gently pushed her away and knelt down so they were eye to eye. His hands felt heavy on her shoulders, like stones pressing down on her spirit. "Amora, we talked about this. Papa has important business to attend to. I'm going to help the village, bring them electricity, clean water, maybe even build a school. Isn't that wonderful? But, Papa..." "Listen," he said, his voice taking on that tone adults use when they think they're being wise. "I know you're worried because of that silly dream, but look around you." He gestured toward his bodyguards. "I have Sergeant Okoro and his entire security team with me. I have 2 doctors traveling with us. I even have a food taster who will try everything before I eat it. Nothing can happen to me." A food tester. Amara's heart sank like a rock in deep water. Her father had thought of everything, except that palm wine at traditional ceremonies was something guests were expected to drink immediately as a sign of respect. There would be no time for testing, no moment for the bodyguards to interfere. Elder Okwu had planned this perfectly. Her father's face hardened like clay left in the sun. "Amara, enough. I will not have my daughter spreading lies about innocent villagers. These people are my people. They're proud that one of their sons became successful. They want to celebrate with me, not harm me. That's enough. I'm leaving now. And I don't want to hear another word about this nonsense. Mama Kemi will take good care of you while I'm gone." He walked toward the door, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble floor like the ticking of a clock counting down to disaster. At the doorway, he turned back one last time. I'll call you tonight after the welcome ceremony, and tomorrow I'll bring you back some beautiful traditional jewellery from the village market. You'll see, everything will be fine." Amara ran after him, her bare feet slapping against the cold floor. "Papa, wait! What if you just don't drink anything they offer you? Promise me you won't drink the palm wine." Amara refusing palm wine at a traditional ceremony would be the highest insult. It would destroy everything I'm trying to accomplish there. I won't do it. The car door slammed shut with a sound like thunder. Through the tinted window, Amara could see her father settling into the leather seat, already reaching for his phone to make business calls. He wasn't thinking about her anymore. He wasn't thinking about danger. He was thinking about profit and respect and showing off his success. The convoy of black SUVs rolled down the driveway like a funeral procession. Amara stood in the doorway, watching until they disappeared around the corner, swallowed by the busy Lagos traffic. Mama Kemi came up behind her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Child, you did everything you could." "But it wasn't enough," Amara whispered. "I failed him." 300 miles away from Lagos, in the dusty heart of Umunna village, Chief Emeka Okafor stepped out of his air-conditioned SUV and into a world that felt like stepping back in time. "Welcome, welcome our son who has made us proud," shouted Chief Nwankwo, the village head, as he hurried forward with his arms spread wide. He was a small, cheerful man whose smile was as bright as the golden tooth that gleamed in the front of his mouth. Behind him came a crowd of villagers, women in colourful wrappers with babies tied to their backs, children with curious eyes and dusty feet, and old men leaning on walking sticks carved from ancient wood. They clapped and sang in Igbo. Their Chief Okafor felt his chest swell with pride. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Respect, admiration, the recognition of a successful son who had never forgotten his roots. His expensive agaba billowed around him as he walked, and he felt like a king returning to claim his rightful throne. "My people," he called out in Igbo, his voice carrying across the village square. "I have come home." The crowd cheered louder, and Chief Okafor waved like a politician at a rally. He had practiced this moment in his mind 100 times during the long drive from Lagos. Everything was perfect. Elder Okwu Namdi watched the celebration with eyes as cold as stones at the bottom of a deep well. He was a tall, thin man with skin like dark leather and 3 deep tribal marks carved into each cheek, marks that told the story of his ancestors and his place in the village hierarchy. While everyone else smiled and cheered, Elder Okwu's face remained as still as a carved mask. He remembered the day, 3 years ago, when Chief Okafor's bulldozers had come to tear down homes for the oil pipeline. He remembered the tears of the families who had to leave their ancestral land. He remembered the promises of compensation that came too little and too late. Most of all, he remembered the arrogance of the rich man who had once been a village boy, who had forgotten that money couldn't wash away the pain of displaced people. But Elder Okwu was a patient man. He had waited 3 years for this moment. He could wait a few more hours. "Come, come," Chief Nwankwo called to Chief Okafor. "We have prepared a feast in your honour. The women have been cooking since dawn. Pounded yam, pepper soup, fried fish and palm wine fresh from the trees." As they walked toward the village hall, Chief Okafor felt completely safe. His bodyguards flanked him like protective shadows, their eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Dr. Emeka, his personal physician, walked close behind, with a medical bag full of emergency supplies. Even his food taster, a nervous young man named Peter, stayed within arm's reach. The village hall was a large, open building with a thatched roof supported by wooden pillars. Colourful fabrics had been hung from the rafters, and the floor was covered with woven mats arranged in a circle. In the centre sat a low table, laden with food that made Chief Okafor's mouth water. Steaming bowls of soup, mountains of white pounded yam, and platters of grilled fish that smelled like heaven. "Sit here, at the place of honour," Chief Nwankwo said, gesturing to a carved wooden chair that had been decorated with kola nuts and cowrie shells. "You are our most distinguished guest." As Chief Okafor settled into the chair, he felt like he was sitting on a throne. Around the circle, the village elders took their places. Wise old men with weathered faces and eyes that had seen many seasons come and go. Elder Okwu sat directly across from him, and for a moment their eyes met. Chief Okafor nodded respectfully, and Elder Okwu nodded back. But if Chief Okwu had been paying closer attention, he might have noticed that the elder's smile never reached his eyes. He might have seen the way Elder Okwu's fingers drummed silently against his knee, like someone counting down to an important moment. "Before we eat," Chief Nwankwo announced, "we must perform the traditional welcome ceremony. Elder Okwu, as our most senior elder, will you do us the honour?" Elder Okwu rose slowly, his joints creaking like old wood. In his hands he held a beautiful calabash, a gourd that had been carved and decorated with intricate patterns. The palm wine inside was fresh and white, with foam bubbling at the surface like tiny pearls. "Our ancestors say that when a son returns home, he must drink from the same cup as his fathers," Elder Okwu said, his voice deep and resonant. "This palm wine comes from the trees that watched you grow as a boy. It carries the blessings of your forefathers and the hopes of your people." Chief Okafor smiled broadly. This was even better than he had imagined. A traditional welcome ceremony would make excellent material for the documentary his media team was filming. As Elder Okwu walked slowly around the circle, holding the calabash high for all to see, he began to chant in ancient Igbo, words that spoke of homecoming and brotherhood, of forgiveness and new beginnings. His voice was hypnotic, and the other elders joined in, their voices blending together like a river flowing toward the sea. But as he passed behind Chief Okafor's chair, Elder Okwu's free hand moved with the speed of a striking snake. A small vial appeared in his palm, clear glass containing clear liquid. In one smooth motion, he emptied the vial into the palm wine and tucked the empty container back into the folds of his wrapper. The chanting continued. No one had seen. No one suspected. Elder Okwu completed his circle and stood before Chief Okafor, the poisoned calabash extended like an offering to the gods. "Drink, my son," he said, his voice warm with false friendship. "Drink and be welcome in your father's house." Chief Okafor reached for the calabash with both hands, his face glowing with joy and pride. The moment he had dreamed of was finally here. Acceptance, respect, and the recognition of his success. If only he had listened to his daughter. If only he had remembered that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they plot your destruction. Bye for now, and thank you for watching. See you in part 2 of this story, and don't forget to leave a comment to tell us what you think Chief Okafor would have done better. Would he have listened to his daughter or just followed his instincts?